Man, it's funny. Now that I watched that, I'm like, Garrett's on there like 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
The intro is sick, man. It gets me hyped. I want to like run through a brick wall now or something.
Right. Man, but no, I'm excited to have you on, Garrett. Like this thing said, our relationship really started not the normal way, I guess you could say. I guess it's normal for today's standards. Like started over these Zoom calls. And for what I will say that's not normal about it is a bunch of 23, 22, 24-year-olds starting an accountability group, right? Like how many times do you hear that happen and get involved? But, it's great because right when I said accountability group, Braden's like, oh, you got to meet my dude, Garrett. So you were able to hop in there. We're able to start like meeting. Like we met every single week talking about goals, passions. That just gives you a little tidbit about Garrett here. But Garrett, why don't you just tell us like where you're at, where you're from right now?
All right. So thanks for having me on, man. It's great to hop on and just share some value. So, so basically my quick story, played Division I baseball in college and got done with school and just basically wanted to get into business and making some money. So I've been in real estate for the last 2 years.
Right.
And that's essentially it.
Right. So getting into sales, I want to always get into this because, especially as young people are like, oh, let's get into business and get into sales. I'm going to make a bunch of money right away. Is that the case? Is that true?
It's so the grand scheme of it, yes.
Right.
And what you have to do is you have to put in all the work. And so that was, pretty eye-opening for me. It's like, holy crap, I'm going against people that are like double my age. I gotta get trained in this. I gotta get good at it if I want to beat them. So that's basically been the transition.
So no, and you're right, and I definitely hear you there too, because I remember when I was managing some people that were more than twice my age, and I'm like, why the hell are these? Like thinking in your head, you start thinking like, how am I beating out these people, or how is this happening, right? Yeah. So like, what are some ways you overcome that when you start seeing people that are older than you doing it, and you're like, man, this is who I'm going up against? How do you overcome that?
Well, the big thing for me was getting professionally trained through NAEA, because
right.
When you're new into the business, you're like, hey, I'm a hard worker. I'm a good communicator. I'm this, I'm that. But like everybody says that, you have to figure out how to differentiate yourself. And then so after going through the training, the NAEA boot camp, all that stuff, and really getting a good foundation with Joe Simonette, my old team leader.
Yeah.
Really kind of, it really kind of skyrocketed everything. So it was a lot of fun.
And what's up, my man, Josue? I see you out there. And I'll tell you what, from my experience too, like what was absolutely massive for me was like who I came in there with, got training from, and who I surrounded myself with, right? How much has that been able to impact your immediate growth? Because man, 20 million within your first 2 years, and we'll get into 20 million, and now you being able to go out and start your own team, that doesn't happen too often. It's like, how much was it an impact of like having the right people around you?
Oh, it was everything. I still tell people to this day, I contribute everything I've possibly done to Joe Simonette. He's literally trained me and sculpted me, from the birth, very first day that I got my license, so I was involved with like high level people from the start.
Right.
So it just kind of, that level just kind of started out way up there on the top, and I didn't have to kind of work to get to that point.
Right.
It was just a higher standard that I kind of set myself for, and Joe set for me. And then it was just, get trained, and then now it's going on the appointments,
So all right. So you got started with Joe. Did you know what you were getting into? Like what, maybe like, were there some things that you asked in the interview, or let's just say, did it kind of fall into your lap and it kind of worked out that way?
It really kind of fell in my lap. So my mom has been in the real estate industry for like 20 plus years. She used to have her own refinance and title and escrow company, and was working around the business for a long, long time. Then she got her broker's license about 5 years ago and started out at KW and basically hopped on a team with Joe. And so she was on the team for like 2 years prior before I started. And so, every month she would be coming down to Texas, watching my games and everything. And she'd be telling me about Joe. Oh, Joe's, going on these appointments. He's listing this many houses, doing all this production. He's that, and so the conversation kind of just started with that. And my mom kept telling him, he was like, hey, this kid, he's going to be good in real estate. You should have him on your team. So it kind of like built up over 6 months to a year. And then when I got done fully with school, I actually got my license when I was still playing college baseball. That's the funny thing. It didn't activate it until I got back
Right.
6 months later in the summer. And then just it kind of was just natural. He was like, all right, if you're willing to put in the work, like, let's go,
Right.
let's do it. And then so that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, no, and just to echo what you were saying, we got some pretty good advice here. Always listen to your mom. I feel like ever since the one time when my mom told me to put on a jacket, I'm like, I'm not putting on a jacket. I'm out there and froze my ass off. I'm like, all right, anytime she says that, I'm just gonna do it.
Moms are smart.
Yeah, they're smart. They know what's going on. And yes, I think this one's big too. Being connected to high level people makes a difference. But it's the action that you take after it too, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that get coaching that go to masterminds and they go there every year, but end up in the same seat every single time.
Yep.
So I want to ask you, so what has been a limiting belief for you that you've had to overcome getting started in this business?
That's a good question. Dang, that's a thinker. Really, like my limiting belief was, kind of my own beliefs, like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm too young. Oh, I can't sell, this amount of houses per year. Like, nobody's going to trust me. Nobody's, just kind of like the thoughts that go in your head. Like, same thing with baseball, honestly. Like, when you go to play, oh, I hope he doesn't throw a curveball, or, oh, I hope it's kind of like the same thing. Like, once you stop just thinking about it, kind of like in the movie Sandlot, just stop thinking small. That's how it kind of was. Like, I just
the baseball references. Yeah.
Exactly. I just stopped thinking, just went on the appointments, provided people value, just tried to be the best real estate agent for people that I possibly could, being the best communicator, just controlling the things that I can control. And then everything just kind of worked itself out after that. So I really just had to stop thinking and just start taking massive action.
Right. And you're literally thinking yourself out of winning. Right. Like, because when you do that, you're making your mind up for somebody else that I'm not as good. I'm younger. When you have those thoughts, that's going to come out in everything else you do. Can you think of a time that limiting belief like specifically came up and kind of held you back?
Yeah. So actually, as soon as you say that, a thing popped up. So it's surprising. In my first 2 years, I've actually surprisingly done a decent amount of really high sales price transactions. Like, I think
look, you're still doing it. It's not surprising. You're great, Garrett. Come on. No, I get what you're saying though, man. Yeah.
Is 200 to 3 to 4, but literally the first listing was $850,000.
Wow.
And going on these like appointments, like my first couple ones, I remember I went on one in a really nice subdivision neighborhood.
Right.
And it was like $699. And it was like after my second couple appointments, I was like, oh, I got this, and it's fine. Yeah. And he hit me with a couple hard questions. I had to be vulnerable. And I was like, honestly, sir, like, this is my first year in the business. This is my track record. And then kind of just had to lay it out there. I couldn't lie to the guy.
Right.
He knows I'm young. He knows I'm not 55 years old, but that definitely came up quite a bit. When you're dealing with those higher priced ones, it's very, it's very intense, because it's $500,000, $1 million price point. It's a lot of money,
Right.
So it was intense.
What ended up happening there? Did you win it?
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't win it. Yeah.
No, but the funny thing is the house actually sold for the price that I told him it was going to sell for.
Really?
He listed it about $30,000 more than what I told him.
Right. So overcoming that, I know you mentioned just like having like basically just the more confidence in yourself, but like where'd you start gaining that more confidence in yourself to overcome that limiting belief?
Well, really, it comes with the training. That's a big thing. Really, the NAEA Foundation, like you just, I feel bad for people that haven't done it because if I started out in the business, it would have been scary, because like going out on appointments, like not knowing what to say and how to say it, like you have to actually be professionally trained to be able to provide the most value for these people. I think once you have that training and that foundation, the confidence just kind of comes naturally because you literally know what you're talking about. You're not just being people. So that was the big thing, the training.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make too, because this was something that there was a limiting belief. My buddy asked me this one weekend. He was asking me, he's like, okay, here's what I'm running into, because he's in a sales job too. He was just curious. He's like, what should I be doing differently? And instantly, somebody else chimed in and we're saying, oh, just some people are better at it than others. It's not you. It's just like some people are better. I'm like, no. I'm like, shut that F up right now. Like that is a limiting belief. I'm like, do not listen to that. And that's what it comes down to. Like you were saying, it's the training that you do. It's the time you put in, the commitment level that you have to handling objections, to figuring out the price point, to becoming an expert. Yeah, you might be better at talking to people, but that's not going to make you an expert. That's not going to help you overcome that hump. Right. So
exactly.
I think,
and you do have to have, I mean, just the basic, personality traits to be able to articulate your value to somebody. I mean, you would probably agree. That's not like a limiting belief, but that's just something you have to do. Like if you want to.
But I feel like that could be trained though, too. Like to have that articulation, to have tonality, to have like that can still be trained to some extent as well.
Oh yeah. I didn't know jack squat what to say, starting out in the business, but I wanted to know.
Right.
You just got to have the want, and then the training kind of just follows in suit.
Well, and especially in real estate, you might be able to get by slick talking with some like little products that you might sell here or there. I'm not downplaying it, but when you're dealing with a house, like you said, $800,000, a slick talker is not going to get them to sign the contract.
Nope.
Right.
Not at all.
Like, this is most likely one of their biggest investments. So just having that is not going to cut it. You need to have that training. And even more so, like you said, you need to commit to the training. So at what point did you realize that like I needed to commit to the training, right? And like commit to this part of the process?
Well, funny thing is I really committed to it. Like my first 2 weeks in the business, I didn't pick up a phone until I went through that whole training course. Cause I'm kind of like a really detail oriented person sometimes. Like cause I don't want to look like a fool in front of somebody. So I was like, I have to know front end and backwards what to say, how to say it, how to provide value to my clients and stuff like that. So really, I thought it was highly important. And then obviously Joe Simonet told me that. So I took it to heart. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn everything before I talk to somebody. I didn't want to just half-ass it. And then, 6 months, 8 months later, kind of figure it out. I wanted to get it right from the get-go. So,
there's something, it's like the honeymoon phase in any job, right? Like right away, it's like, I'm going to be committed to learning. I'm going to be committed to the phones. And then we do great in business. And like 4 months later, we're not doing any of that. We're like, why isn't my business working anymore? Right. It's like, probably because you're not doing that. Did you have to go through that where like you were doing all the right things to start once the honeymoon phase kind of left off? Maybe like got away from some of those tactics?
That's so good. You just hit it on the head on that. That's so true. Like I used to be able to be totally fine with sitting on the dialer and making 250 phone calls. But, now like I've gotten to that point where like I can do that and I 100% should be doing it. But also like the time that I need to be spending is getting face to face with people.
Right.
And so what I've started to now, like after starting my team is delegating some of that stuff because I am literally at appointments 2 to 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And it could be, an hour drive there, hour drive back, then a 30-minute appointment, so it starts to take up time of your day, and that's valuable time where I could be prospecting. Right. And so now got 2 ISAs set up. And so actually our first week doing it and got a so far. So I'm excited.
So no, this is definitely taking us to like the next step I wanted to get into because at 25, I can relate to this. Being able to say like, nope, I'm going out on my own. I'm going to do this and start pretty much like you started your own team.
Yep.
How was that? Were you a little scared? Like what was that process like?
It's still scary. So it's still not 100% fully set up because I need to have my managing broker's license. But basically I started the brand. I started I kind of started it and I'm trying to figure it out as we kind of go. But as of right now, I have a full-time assistant, on every single transaction that I do. And I have 2 ISAs now that are going to be part-time.
Right.
And so it's, as of now, technically 3 employees. And in 6 months, when I do get my managing broker's license, my mom is actually going to be hopping on the team as well.
Nice.
So, and I'm not trying to grow like super big, super fast. I'm just trying to get really solid pillars built up first.
Right.
And then kind of like worry about that stuff like as it goes on, because it's going to be a process, but it's scary being, just a regular real estate agent and basically being a self-employed independent contractor. But now as I transition into spending money every single month on marketing, on signing, on, you know, stuff like that, it's like, oh crap, this really is like a business. Like,
yeah.
you really have to fork out like $2,000 a month to be able to keep this wagon on the road, you know?
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's really cool and exciting, but it's also scary at the same time.
So that leads it's a great lead into this next one. Do you treat it differently now that you're seeing the numbers and seeing everything on the back end? Like, how much has your appreciation and like your mindset shifted from now? It's like, okay, these leads coming at this price and everything. It's like these need to get converted. And like, what's the mindset? What's the shift there?
Oh yeah, you treat it when it's your own money, you know, and you're not just paying a split at closing. Like it's important, you know, like spending money on Zillow, like you better answer that live transfer, you know, even if, that's $185 phone call. You know, I'm taking that phone.
You're picking up the phone, buddy.
So and I did that before, but just the mental side of it, it's just a different mental model, you know? And so, yeah, it's very, very important, you know, any lead, like you do not want to let slip through the fingers, you know? Very important.
Yeah. And I know me personally, this was something like, this was difficult to do the first couple, like the first time or two, but once I've done it, it's opened up my business and made it so much easier. How difficult was it to start bringing other people in to do jobs that were like that? You think like, man, I can do that job, but it might not necessarily be the highest and best use of your time. Was that difficult for you to initially bring people in?
It is. It's very difficult. You know, for the ISAs, you know, we had them go through the whole NAEA seller side of things. They know the verbiage and stuff like that. But just, you know, like for me, you know, naturally just overcoming objections, you know, for other people, it's not natural. And so just building that, again, that foundation, that base is tough. You know, it's our first week doing it. You know, in 2, 3, 4 months from now, it's going to be a well-oiled machine. And they're actually, my 2 ISAs are actually rock stars. Like they're crushing it. Like, really, really good. And, you know, my assistant, Karen, she's our managing broker here in Olympia branch. And so she's managed my transactions for the last 2 years, but she is the best person ever. She is like the person that you want to have on your team, like managing your stuff, you know, dots all the I's, crosses all the T's, does all the paperwork. That that stuff just stresses me out. I don't like to do the paperwork. I just like to go out and meet the people and go on the appointments and then bring escrows back to her, and then she gets it started. So it's a good, you know, I'm hiring my weaknesses essentially. So focusing on the strengths, hiring the weaknesses. So
and I think that's so important. There's this concept from this book called Traction that I learned. It's called Letting Go of the Vine, right? So like what most business owners tend to do, and I find myself doing this too, and it usually comes from a lack of, I guess, trust in yourself and your employees, is where let's say I give Garrett a task. Even though I give Garrett the task, I'm going to constantly check it. I'm going to constantly be over his shoulder. I'm going to be constantly like, hey, did you do that right? Did you cross the I, you know, like, or cross your T, dot the I? And what happens is I'm paying someone to do a job. I'm still doing the job. So I didn't free up my time and I'm paying someone to do it. So that's why it's letting go of the vine and just saying, okay, you're going to do that part of my business, right? And just being okay with it. So was that difficult for you at any point? Like whether it's the phones or anything else, where it's just like letting go of the vine and just being okay with somebody else completely handling it?
Yes, it's very difficult, you know, and I still don't have it 100% figured out. And I think it's fine to not have it figured out, you know, when you're starting out. Obviously, if we're 5 years into it and I'm still doing that, like but it is, you know, letting go of the vine, you know, because then it's like, okay, you know, some of my ISAs are making 200 plus phone calls and calling
on Garrett's behalf.
Having 40, 50 conversations, you know, that's a lot of conversations. And it's like, okay, are they doing it right? I hope they're doing it right. You know, because those are valuable, you know, the first 5-10 seconds of the call are, you know, so they're willing to learn. That's the best part. They're very coachable, and you know, I like the foundation and the pillars that we're building. It's gonna be good.
So great, man. You're like guys, we didn't plan this, but you're setting me up here, Garrett. I'm loving it. So you're talking about like the pillars and things that you're building. Like, what are some of those pillars that you find that are important in building a team and finding the right people? Maybe like some of those core values involved.
Right. I think just for real estate in general, it probably applies to other industries. I'm not sure, but I really, really think that like the client experience, like the whole entire sales process is like the most important thing out there. Because like if you have raving fans, raving fan clients, and I do, and so like that is just, you can't put a price on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because when you make people feel important and make them feel special, like they're going to remember that for the rest of their lives. You know what I mean? So I think like that is like the focus. That is like the goal behind everything, is just creating that good experience for the client and really just building that relationship. Like even on the phones, like obviously we prospect for listings because there's no inventory, like we literally have buyers that would buy something right now if it was on the market. So we are looking for more listings, obviously. Right. But even if people are not interested in selling their house within the next 12 months, like we ask, is it okay if we stay in touch with you and build a relationship and send you our monthly market report and get you on our weekly newsletter? Like we still want to build the relationship and become friends with them, because if we can provide any value in any service in the future, it doesn't matter if it's 6 months or 18 months from now. We want to treat that with the same exact importance, 6 months, 18 months from now than tomorrow, or, if we're going to look at our house this weekend. So that's what I learned from Joe, is he's really good at building relationships with clients. And so I, try to model that same exact thing that he taught me.
Yeah, no, you're 100%. Like I agree with you there, because, a lot of times too, we would focus on going wide and getting as many people as we can, when in reality, a lot of times it's just important to go deep to make sure each individual has that great experience and gets that same result. So I want to wind it back a bit. So when you decided to go out on your own, like what was going through your mind? Like what was going through your mind, man, when you're just like, I'm having success where I'm at, but I want to go this direction? Because you were successful with what you were doing, right?
Yep.
It wasn't like you're sitting there, you're like, maybe were you unhappy, or were you just like, what was that mindset shift change? They're like, I need to go out on my own and do this.
It was the tipping point. It was the total tipping point where I got to the point where like I was having a lot of leads come in, I mean, from like Op City and different referral bases and KV Core Property Boost and just a lot of different like type of lead gen.
Right.
And I started to lose people based on, me going out on an appointment for 2 hours, somewhere that's far away and then coming back. I would like lose somebody. They'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I went out with this person and we went out and showed the house. And I'm like, crap, like I can't be losing this stuff. So it got to the tipping point where I'm like, man, I need to like build and delegate, because I can't wear all the hats by myself, because I'm literally going to lose money. So I took that same, risk and just put that into delegating other type of things. And so it was really just the tipping point. I got to the point like, man, I like could probably stay here and still be on the team and still, do good and everything. But also I'm at the tipping point where I need to, like, I don't want to, I need to.
Right.
And so I just said, screw it. I'm doing it. I'm starting the brand, starting everything and figuring out as I go.
Yeah. And I just feel like that's interesting, because, I feel like a lot of us, no matter what business we're in, we're at those tipping points too, where it's like, this is where I'm at. Where do I go from here? And what's the next step? The crazy thing is, I think a lot of us do see it, right? Like, do feel what the next step is. So was there anything specific that just made you say, I'm going to jump and pretty much, here's what I noticed a lot of us tend to do, right? A lot of us that do take that risk. I'm going to jump and build the plane on the way down, right? I'm going to build everything on the way down. So like, what made you make the leap and start building? Like, what was there some specific that's like, all right, I'm jumping, I'm doing it? That
was it. It really, that's what it feels like, jumping and then building the plane on the way down. But I think it was losing money. I hate to say, it's not all about money, but it kind of is, when you're in the business, like when you're forking out thousands of dollars a month, to try to build your own business, it's when you lose that money, it's tough, and so that was like the wake up call when I you know, because I actually lost like a $800,000 buyer lead that weekend. You know, long story short, lost a huge lead that I paid for.
Right.
And so it sucked, you know, so that was like the tipping point for me where I'm like, okay, you know, I got to delegate some of this stuff. I got to get systems and processes in place because I don't want to lose any more money.
Right.
You know?
No, I'm with you, man. And it's just also, I think it comes down to betting on yourself that you're going to be able to build the plane before you fall, basically. Yep. Right. Like, you know, like, because that's the thing. Nobody knows. Like, I don't care how sure of a thing you think you have. Nobody knows for an absolute fact. There's so many different variables and things out there. You're basically betting on yourself that I'm going to overcome the variable that comes in front of me. I'm going to overcome the barriers. I'm going to overcome whatever, basically the world, the economy, everything is going to throw at me to make this successful, right? So it does come on like that certain bet on yourself at some point that you're going to get it done. Yeah. I mean, so like when you decided to take that bet on yourself, I mean, let me ask you this. I don't want to say, do you regret it? Like, what is something that you did not think of getting into this that has like come up a good amount? Does that make sense?
Yes. Totally makes sense. Yeah. What I didn't fully understand and fully expect is, you know, Braden and Jake Hinder talk about this a lot. I've talked to Braden about this multiple times. It's like when you put like a working dollar into your business, like you have to get a return on that. So it's like, man, like what, you know, where do I put my money in this? You know, because a decent amount of capital to like start delegating stuff. You're like, okay, I got to get a return on this. You know, so it's hard. Obviously, that's the biggest roadblock to anybody in any business out there. But it's like, man, this is real life. You know, you gotta put in some work. And you gotta get a return on it.
This ain't Wolf of Wall Street when he's like fun bucks. He's like, these are my fun bucks, and he's just throwing them everywhere. Like it's not really like that. Yeah, man, it's not monopoly money, man. We're not playing with house money anymore. It's like those decisions matter. So has that held back your thinking on some things and held back your risk taking, or does it just make you make more calculated? Like what's your mind what's your process with that? Kind of walk me through that.
It does. It 100% does. Because you know you want to input the right amount of money to get a good return. Like, you know, for example, you could put $2,500 into Zillow this month, but you knew for a fact that you could get $5,000 back.
Right.
Would you do it? Obviously, yes. But you know, it's still forking out $2,500. You know, you do not know if you are going to get a return on that. You're just betting on the fact that you're going to get enough qualified clients to be able to go show them property or get a listing. You know, so it's scary. You know, it's like, okay, do I only put 500 or do I only put 1,000 or 15? You know, what do I do if I put 500? Do I get $5,000 back? Or, you know, so it's you know, like a risk reversal type of thing. It's like, okay, what is the return on this investment that I'm about to make? And it's tough. I'm only 2 months into this. I still don't know how it works, but got a pretty good return on a couple investments my first month starting the team. And so now it's just kind of building and expanding on that.
That's one of our mottos. Money is meant to be entertained, right? Like I'm not doing this just to sit back here and put it in my savings account, right? It's meant to get back out there and make me some more, go do different things and just keep going out there, right? My money's not meant to sit here and sit in the closet and wait for me to retire. No, like you got to keep investing back into it. Find ways to make more money, right? Make that money, make more money, entertain it a little bit. Yeah. So Garrett, you know, what we're doing here is we want to get this out to a bunch of young entrepreneurs, young people in business who really want to take that next step. Tell some of them what something that you wish you knew when you got started in this entire process.
Well, one thing I wish I knew was obviously what to delegate it and what order to do. You know, the priority confusion aspect is very real.
Right.
It's like, okay, do I hire a buyer's agent? Do I hire a ISA? Do I hire an assistant? Like, what order do I do all this in? Right. So the order of operations is definitely tough, you know, and then like hitting them by land, by air, by sea, you know, like starting mailers, starting Facebook ads, starting, you know, cold calling. There's so many aspects to this. And really, you know, I actually love the investment side of this business as well, because we now own our first rental property.
Nice.
and doing really well on it. So now that's like the other factor into this, where it's like, you know, we can go out on appointments and like, if it's a dumpy house, like if it's a fixer upper, like we can literally buy it with a hard money loan and remodel it, you know, and do some type of burr or do a flip or do a long-term rental. And so it's like, that's the other aspect. And Joe is a genius on the investing side of the business, also the brokering side, but like, I need to like factor that into the business now. Like, okay, we can actually buy a house if it's that dumpy, you know, if it's a good deal. So it's like, okay, now obviously we're focusing on the brokering side, but we still got to focus on the investment side, because that is the long-term, you know, big wealth in real estate. You know, it's like the sleeping giant that nobody wants to talk about, but it's you can make very, very good money investing in real estate, you know, and not just being a broker on it. So that's another thing that I still need to get figured out, but I feel along the way. But right now it's just, okay, now what's the next step type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's huge, man. Priority confusion. What's a priority? As I love listening to John Kitchens. He's like, if you got 5 priorities, you got no priorities, right? Yeah. Because it's like, you got one priority. That's what a priority is. It's the one thing you're going to focus on. So you got 5, you got none.
You got none.
Yeah, you got none. Yeah, I'm trying to do my John Kitchens accent. How was it? Not bad. You got none. No. Hey, Garrett, I appreciate you coming on. You know, it's always a pleasure talking to you, seeing what you're doing. We're going to continue to follow your growth because I know it's coming. As you guys know, for all your content needs, everything you need, go to nickkrem.com, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
All right. Thank you.